Welcome to Systematizing Creativity. Today we're going to be talking about deconstruction. That is the process of going from some high-level concept or object or system to all of its sub-pieces or sub-components or modes of instantiation. There are many targets that you can point a concept like deconstruction at. So take creativity itself. You could ask yourself a question like, oh, what are all of the mental motions that people make when they're engaging in a creative experience? You can ask what kinds of creativity exist, or what properties do those kinds of creativity have and are shared between those modes of creativity. And immediately you have a space of possibilities that can be searched systematically. Or you can decompose an experience, say, taking a symphony and deconstructing it into its subparts. So in this case, which instrument is playing when? What are the different melodies that those instruments are playing? And when you look at those hierarchical deconstructions of the symphonic experience, you have an affordance available to you. Basically, you can recombine different instruments with different melodies. You can ask, oh, well, there are all of these patterns inside of the symphony, and so can we decompose it into different measures or into its time signature in a way that that gives us some intuitive notion for how to recombine different parts of it in order to create something subtly different, a variant. You see lots of theme and variation, and a lot of that looks like you've deconstructed the simple subcomponents and recombined those subcomponents. Or you'll have an object, like you want to understand your computer. So you break it into its subcomponents, and you ask, how do these components interact with one another? And so you end up with a model that looks like its nodes and those interconnections. But basically, when you come to a process that's worth optimizing, you want to ask, oh, well, what are the subparts of those process? What functions do those subparts serve? And can we replace the things that accomplish those functions with something else? So basically, this is at a high level the idea of deconstruction and of decomposition. Where deconstruction is a very general term, but decomposition looks like recomposing elements, and it has this sense that you can take something and enumerate all of the subcomponents, which in combination allow the higher level object to function, computer to function, system to function, etc. And so what I'm going to outline for you are techniques for applying decomposition to any object that you see. Ideally, this is internalized so that at an intuitive level you notice, oh, here's a situation where a concept is being used to represent multiple objects that are different from each other. And if we deconstruct it, we will dissolve any disagreement or uncertainty that exists about what's happening. And so here are a few instantiations of the concept of deconstruction. So one thing you can do is take your target object and you ask, what kinds of this object exist? So you say, oh, here we are looking at an idea. What are all of the different versions of that idea? So say you take creativity, you ask, okay, what are all of the ways to create novel value? And the thing that will be shared between those methods is that they all create novel value. Or you take something like, what properties does the object that I'm looking at have? And for each of those properties, depending on how they're structured, so say, I am looking at, I'm looking at a water bottle. What properties does it have? It has a shape to it, and that's a property that is usually cylindrical, at least for a water bottle. It's approximately cylindrical. It has this opening, this cup at the top. It has basically this mechanism for the water getting to my mouth. It could have been a straw, but in this case, it's just poured. And all of those properties are axes of variation that I could use to create an innumerable set of possible water bottles by basically recombining those sub-elements. And so there's this intuitive recombination as soon as you're breaking things down at a functional level. And there are a few other questions that are relevant. So it's like, okay, well, what if in doing decomposition I apply it recursively. So I take some problem, I break it down into its subparts, and I break those subparts down into subparts, and I break the subparts down into subparts. It's very easy and trivial to solve sufficiently simple versions of the problem, and so if it's easy to basically construct up the solution from trivial subproblems, often it's very efficient. And in computer science at an algorithmic level, this sits underneath merge, sort, and efficient matrix multiplication algorithms. This notion of decomposition, it's very powerful. And so this idea is something that can be instantiated in many ways, that can be pointed at many targets, and can be very valuable to you. And so we are going to walk through the experience of running decomposition and deconstruction on a few